Hello Indie Warriors, welcome back to I Dream of Indie Games. I'm Old Gamer Joe, and we are back with another list featuring some of the unsung heroes within the indie gaming scene. Games that didn't get the recognition that they deserve when they first released. Yes, it sadly happens a lot with indies, but we're here to highlight 10 of our favorites today. Before we jump into all of these sweet releases, do know that we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. You can help keep the lights on and shine a bright light on independent content today. Gain Discord access, early ad-free shows, shoutouts at the end of every video we produce, a new podcast, and even free games depending on your tier. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. Also, be sure to check out Nia over at twitch.tv/idreamofindiegames. She streams every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Can't wait to see you over there. Alright then, let's get into the indies. I want to start with a racing game, believe it or not, one that pays tribute to classic arcade-style racers and was developed by Sumo Digital, perhaps best known for the Sonic racing games. Really fun series, side note there. But this was a more scaled-back indie release for them, with a strong emphasis on nostalgia and producing solid mechanics. And the name of that game is HotShot Racing. If you loved classic Sega arcade racers like Virtual Racing, then you'll feel right at home here. This one has a full Grand Prix mode, split screen options, and a cops and robbers mode. The game is chock full of different ways to play. In fact, the developer has continued to work on the game since release and added even more content, more tracks, more modes, so much stuff to do in this game. But really, the majority of the fun is going to come with getting 4 friends together and racing head to head. There are over 16 tracks now, 3 difficulty modes, with the game being pretty easy for anyone to pick up and play. Drifting is a big aspect of the gameplay, so if you aren't much for that, you might not be into this one, but otherwise, if you enjoy unlockables, solid arcade action, a nice visual presentation that's simple and clean, and great sound design, I highly recommend adding this one to your collection. HotShot Racing goes on sale fairly often, and it's available on all major platforms. At number 9, we next have Minoria, an action Metroidvania with a strong female lead. If you are a fan of the Momodora series, there's a little bit of a connection here. The game has gorgeous visuals and places an emphasis on its combat engine. The story is halfway decent, if not a little convoluted, and yes, the game does offer a pretty steep challenge, so be prepared for that. You'll take massive damage from enemies, giving the game a bit of a Souls feel at times. Still, there is a leveling system which helps to counter the challenge just a bit. Difficulty aside, Minoria is beautiful to look at, plays pretty well, and is a game that feels a bit forgotten these days. I think a lot of people were upset about what the game wasn't, as opposed to what it is. But if you can appreciate it as a title of its own, Minoria will offer plenty of fun to Metroidvania fans. There's solid combat and visuals with tons of enemy variety, and some decent lore if you're into that kind of thing. It's also got a pretty good soundtrack that's worth listening to. The game is Steam Deck verified and goes on sale pretty often. It even comes in bundles. Can you survive the city of Ramazia? Only one way to find out. At number 8, it's Booby Time! This next release did not fare all that well in the review department outside of here at I Dream of Indie Games, where Silent Signs had a great time playing through it. The hell with it, I say. It's a fun release if you ask me too, Silent Signs. We're talking about Onee Chanbara Origin. This franchise has been around a long time, dating all the way back to 2004, and yeah, they haven't all been winners, but typically speaking, there's some fun to be had with these releases. Origin was a celebration of 15 years for the series, and updates the first and second games in the franchise. Much like the other entries, you play as a half-naked sword-fighting badass, mowing down waves of enemies as you watch the blood flow at insane levels. Yeah, it's a bit of a button masher, with turn-your-brain-off style combat similar to a Dynasty Warriors game, but the blood-cleaning mechanic that is introduced is actually quite unique, and there's some cool finishing attacks as well. The game even has a bit of a leveling system, not deep mind you, but fun regardless. Eventually you're able to swap between characters, and the boss fights are pretty dang cool too. If you love blood, half-naked women, and pure action, in no particular order, Onee Chanbara Origin delivers the goods. While it did have a bit of a rocky launch, the game seems pretty stable now, so it should run without issue. Check it out if you're looking for a game that won't be too taxing on your brain. It's available on PlayStation consoles and the PC. Number 7, a great unsung hero here we have a funny point-and-click style game with a whole lot of imagination and creativity. Seriously though, this is one of the more hilarious indies we've ever featured on the channel. Talking about 9 Witches, Family Disruption, which takes place during World War II and involves 2 unlikely heroes who are tasked with saving the world from an evil curse. Alexei Krakovitz, who is in a wheelchair, and scientist Akira Kagasawa work together solving a variety of puzzles, which quite literally involve your soul leaving your body. While the crude humor won't be for everyone, fans of classic point-and-clicks will catch on without much issue. Just be prepared for plenty of dick jokes if you're a bit younger and don't respond well to 90s humor. You will have full control of both characters, which is a bit different from classic point-and-clicks, and the two will work together in some interesting ways. Puzzles are pretty smart and manageable, and the pixel art accompanied by some lovely sound design bring the entire package together beautifully. If you're looking for a point-and-click with some nice modern touches, look no further than 9 Witches, Family Disruption. This developer also went on to create the excellent Vlad Circus Descend into Madness last year, so check that one out too if you enjoy this one. Next at number 6, we have an adult-themed puzzle game that's actually good. Yes, I'm just as shocked as you are, folks. Crawlco Block Knockers isn't just about the T and the A, it's about the B and B, the brain and the brawn. Let's go with that. Or the brain and the bra? Just forget it. Look, believe it or not, underneath the adult skin is a pretty solid puzzler. Now obviously this one's going to be for adults only as it does contain nudity, but the goal is to match blocks which will reveal images of ladies either clothed or unclothed. Kick blocks into spots and create combos, or pull the blocks and jump on them to progress forward. There's a decent amount of strategy, which I wasn't expecting here, and there's even some enemies for you to contend with that will hinder you along the way. With lots of images to unlock, some pretty cool boss encounters, and decent replay value, Crawlco Block Knockers is a worthy addition to your puzzle game collection. Even the visuals are pretty decent, calling back to 16-bit titles, and the funky soundtrack is excellent. I'm serious though, this game's highly enjoyable. Give it a go. Now, at the halfway point, I know it's ironic to talk about Nuts after just discussing Crawlco Block Knockers, but I swear I didn't plan it this way. Nuts is a fascinating title that involves a squirrel, you perverts, not what you were thinking of. This short but sweet indie is honestly unlike anything I've played before, but you take control of a researcher who needs to monitor squirrels. Various phone calls between you and your boss will take place as you hang out in your caravan watching furry friends run wild. You'll move cameras around trying to spot the squirrels and then go off and track them down. Once squirrels are spotted, you want to take a picture from the caravan and send it off to your boss. It sounds really stupid, but it's honestly quite fun. While I can't say Nuts is for everyone, if you seek a more chilled out indie which is very original, this would be a good game to add to your library. The game goes on sale pretty often. In fact, at the time of this video releasing, it has a massive 75% discount, so if it looks interesting to you at all, now's the time to strike. Number 4, we're gonna change things up quite a bit with a beautiful 2D platformer called Lost Words Beyond the Page. And I do mean beautiful, not just visually either. The soundtrack in this game is captivating, one of the greats in all of indie games. You take control of Izzy, who's a young writer that loves her grandmother. You'll sometimes swap to her journal where you learn more and more about the lead character, and other times be sent into a fantasy world. The way that the two worlds come together is really emotional and well executed, and the use of words is fascinating. The platforming is pretty solid, but it's the puzzles which are so unique that are really the star of the show, even though they aren't all that difficult. Yes, most of the creativity lies in the journal sections, but in the fantasy world you'll rely on magic words that change the environment altogether. As you can probably tell, this game is a bit more magical when compared to a lot of other indie platformers, as magic is the basis for how you progress forward. But really, it's not just the gameplay you'll remember about this one, it's the well-written story. I recommend Lost Words Beyond the Page as it's a relatable and entertaining journey throughout. Into the top 3, we move to something much darker with Crime Opera: The Butterfly Effect, available on PC, Switch, and Xbox. This is a visual novel involving the mafia, so you just know things are about to get messy. Crime Opera is not a game you hear very much about these days, but I remember it very well. Though I had heard a sequel was supposed to come out, I'm not sure if it ever did. Maybe you can let me know in the comments below if that happened. Anyways, there's some very dark choices to be made in this one, which is a 24-chapter epic involving a twisted family known as the Gallows that have a nasty family history to say the least. There's death, violence, deceit, everything here. If it wasn't obvious, keep this one away from the kids too. This game was so controversial, in fact, that it was pulled from Steam. Now, how often does that happen? A game can stay on Switch, but it's too hot for Steam. That almost never happens. And honestly, it's a bit extreme if you ask me to go to those measures, but either way, the Switch version is perfectly fine. The story is suspenseful, the music is excellent, and all told, I think it's worth checking out for visual novel fans. You can make some different choices as well, so it might even be worth a second read if you enjoy it enough the first go around. Okay, number 2, precision platformer fans. Here we've got a weird one, A Night at the Races. Another game that's radically different from most releases, stands out for a variety of reasons. This game first presents itself as a point and click before becoming a platformer, and takes place in a bizarre future where the lead character is attempting to win prize money through a video game to try and get out of debt or whatever trouble he's in. I don't know, maybe you'll find out if you play. When I say precision, I mean it though, because this game is tough. Your goal is simply to get to a green checkpoint at the end of each level, which is easier said than done. The game does feature leaderboards as well through its 200 levels. When you combine all of those levels with the crazy and entertaining narrative, A Night at the Races feels like a winner in my book. It is a bit bonkers and will be difficult for players to master, but that also means it's highly replayable. The grimy visuals set the tone well, and the soundtrack is just fire. As long as you're up for its savage challenge, consider adding A Night at the Races to your collection. If the point and click sections have scared you off, trust me, they aren't that bad, and they shouldn't scare you from playing it. And in the worst case, there's a level skip too for the platforming parts if those are too difficult. Number 1, thank you so much for making it to the end of the list, and we hope you found the next indie to add to your library. Last on this list is a unique horror experience that a lot of people missed out on. It's called DAP. DAP's haunting visuals and sound design are reason enough to play, but it's also a pretty interesting gameplay experience. Your goal is to gather these DAP creatures and protect them with your life. Think like Lemmings on acid, but being infected instead of plunging to your doom. Or maybe Oddworld, as ex-hardcore gamers cited in his review of the game here at the channel, something along those lines. Protecting DAPs won't be easy, as not only are enemies out to kill you, there's also viruses running around everywhere. You do have a few attacks such as melee and a magical blast, but the catch here is that the more DAPs you have, the more powerful you'll be. There's also a crafting element to the game, mostly in building fires to scare off enemies and infections. If it wasn't obvious, DAP is a highly unusual game, but it's also a great one. There's a bit of survival, a little action, and a disturbing visual and audio experience to be enjoyed. If you're down for a playable Tool music video, look no further than DAP. Thank you so much again for watching all the way through this video. We hope you found some fun indies that perhaps you hadn't heard of. I believe these games were sadly overlooked, and I'd like to change that narrative by at least now finding them homes in your great indie gaming libraries. As always, be sure to consider heading over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames, where you can gain Discord access, early ad-free shows, shoutouts at the end of every video we produce, and even free games depending on the tier. Okay, Nia's over at Twitch every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern with a brand spanking new indie, and I will see you on the channel for more great indie gaming content.